I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. I love you so much. You'll eat after everyone else. Something cracked inside me. Not anger, not shouting, just a slow, clean break, like frost splitting old wood. I stood in my daughter Erin's kitchen, my hands still warm from the roast I'd spent 5 hours marinating and another 3 cooking to perfection. The scent of rosemary and garlic filled the air, mingling with the sound of laughter from the dining room where my grandchildren and Erin's friends were already seated. I looked at my daughter, her perfect makeup, her designer blouse probably worth more than my monthly Social Security check, the impatient tap of her manicured finger against the granite countertop. When had she become this person? When had I become invisible? "Mom, did you hear me?" Erin's voice sharpened. "Everyone's waiting. The Hamiltons are important clients of Daniel's, and we're already running behind. You can eat after we're done?" I glanced at the roast, my specialty that Erin had specifically requested. Then I looked at the empty seat in the corner of the kitchen, not at the dining table with everyone else, not even at the same time as everyone else. Without a word, I picked up the tray, still hot through my oven mitts, and walked toward the front door. "Mom, what are you—" Erin's voice followed me, but her footsteps didn't. I stepped outside into the autumn evening. The air was crisp, colder than I expected. It helped clear my head as I walked the 3 blocks to my house, careful not to spill the juices that still bubbled at the bottom of the pan. No one followed me, not even a shout from the porch, just the distant sound of children laughing, unaware of what had just happened. Inside my house, everything smelled like lemon soap and dust. My home hadn't been truly mine since Erin convinced me to move in with her family last year after I had that small fall in the bathroom. "It'll be easier," she'd said. "You won't have to worry about bills. We'll take care of you." I should have known better. Nothing is free in this world, not even your own dignity. I placed the roast on my kitchen counter and just stood there, breathing in the silence. No voices demanding things. No grandchildren asking where the cinnamon was or why the potatoes were lumpy. No Erin checking her watch every time I spoke too long. Just me and the ticking of the clock I hadn't wound in weeks. I made myself a plate using one of my old dishes with blue flowers around the rim, chipped slightly at the edge. I served a thick slice of roast, spooned some pan drippings over it, and sat down at my own table. I ate slowly. The meat was tender. The seasoning had taken perfectly. It might have been the best I'd ever made. No one complimented it. No one interrupted me. And for the first time in years, I tasted every bite. When I was done, I washed the dish, dried it, and put it away. Then I sat in the chair by the window and watched the maple trees swaying in the wind. I used to rake those leaves every fall. Now Erin said it was too dangerous. Said I might fall and break a hip. She never asked if I wanted to rake them. She only told. She's always told. My phone rang twice that evening. Erin's name flashed on the screen both times. I watched it fade to darkness without answering. She didn't leave a message. Just rang as if the sound alone might drag me back to my corner seat in her kitchen. It didn't. I slept better than I had in weeks. I woke with the first light, as I always did. My body hadn't forgotten its rhythms. Even if my daughter thought I needed reminding of everything, when to take my pills, when to rest, when it was appropriate to speak to her guests. There was no child to dress, no school run, no breakfast to lay out for people who barely looked up from their phones. Just me in the morning silence. I made a cup of tea and cut another slice of the cold roast, now even more flavorful after resting overnight. I didn't heat it. I just ate it as it was, quietly, while the house held its breath around me. By 8, I'd made a list: check bank accounts, call the lawyer, go through the documents Erin had helped organize last spring. The list wasn't long, but it was mine. I pulled out the folder I'd marked House and Finances and opened it on the kitchen table. Inside were receipts from renovations I'd paid for, utility bills now in Erin's name, notes from her suggesting we streamline things, meaning shifting control slowly but surely out of my hands. I remembered the day she convinced me to add her to one of my checking accounts, just for emergencies. I thought I was being practical. That's how they get you, isn't it? They don't take everything all at once. They chip away until you don't even recognize what used to be yours. The next thing I did was open my laptop and log into my bank account. The website had been bookmarked long ago, though I rarely used it. I left that to Aaron, too often, but not today. I reset the password, answered the security questions thankfully, still ones I had chosen, and there it was, my balance, still intact, still mine. I made a note to visit the branch in person. I wanted eyes to look into, not just screens. I wanted records printed and authorization forms reviewed. No more joint accounts. No more access for convenience. Just me, my name, my signature. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I looked up from my notes and saw the photo on the fridge. One of the few I hadn't packed away when I moved. Me and my older daughter, Grace, standing in the garden with Olivia between us. No more than 7 or 8 then. Her hands full of basil she'd yanked straight from the planter. We were laughing. All 3 of us. Not performing, not posing. Just real. That laugh. I hadn't laughed like that in a long time. I picked up the phone and dialed Olivia's number from memory. It rang twice before she answered. Grandma, her voice hit me like warm light. Hi, sweetheart. A pause. Then, are you okay, Mom called? Well, she didn't say much, but she looked furious. I figured something happened. I smiled. Something did happen. I remembered I'm still alive. Olivia was quiet for a moment, then let out a short laugh. Well, that's one way to put it. I left, I said simply. Last night, I took the roast and I left. There was another pause, but no judgment, just a slow exhale. Good, she said. Good for you. I felt my throat tighten. Would you like to come by sometime? I'll make lunch. Nothing fancy. Tomorrow, she said quickly. I mean, if that's okay. Tomorrow would be lovely. After we hung up, I walked through the house slowly. I hadn't really looked at it in a long time. The curtains I'd sewn myself before Aaron was born. The chipped ceramic lamp I refused to replace. The bookshelf full of old paperbacks no one ever borrowed. Everything had a place. Everything held weight. I dusted. I polished. I opened windows. The house exhaled with me. At noon, I went to the backyard and stood by the raised beds. The soil was dry but not hopeless. The parsley was still holding on. A few stubborn marigolds bowed their yellow heads. I touched the wooden edge of the bed and let my fingers rest there. Aaron had told me not to bother with the garden anymore. It's too much for you. Mom, just let it go. She didn't understand. You don't let go of the things that remind you who you are. You water them, even if your hands shake, even if your knees complain, even if no one else notices. The phone didn't ring again that day, and that was fine. Grace used to say that I was the strongest woman she knew. She'd say it when I fixed the washing machine myself, or when I held my husband Walter's hand as he took his last breath, or when I went to work 3 days after his funeral because someone had to keep the lights on. Funny how that strength becomes invisible the older you get. You stop being the woman who carried the family on her back and become the woman people talk over, the one they pat on the hand, the one they tell to rest, to sit down, to stay out of the way. After Walter died, I didn't crumble. I cooked, cleaned, paid the mortgage, worked late shifts. Aaron was 21, freshly graduated and itching to move out. Grace, still in high school, stayed close. She always had one foot in the real world, never too swept up in ambition to forget who raised her. Aaron had drive, no doubt, but Grace had heart. I remember the first month after his death, how Aaron kept saying, "You need to let someone help you," when what she meant was, "You're not doing this the way I think you should." She moved out a month later, said the house felt too heavy, said she needed air. Grace stayed. She helped with the bills when she could, worked part-time after school, made me laugh when the nights got too quiet. I used to catch her sitting on the porch talking to the stars like they were old friends. She was never in a rush to leave, even when she got married, even when she had Olivia. She made time. That kind of love doesn't shout. It shows up. And when the cancer came, She faced it the same way she faced everything, gently, but with her eyes open. She called me before every chemo appointment, not because she needed advice, but because she knew I needed to hear her voice. When she died, Erin told me, "You have to be strong now for Olivia," but her voice held no softness. It felt more like an assignment than a comfort. Olivia was just 12. She moved in with Erin because I was too old to raise a teenager. I wanted to fight it, to say I could still be a mother, even if my knees ached and my hands trembled some mornings. But I didn't. I let it happen. And maybe that was the first real surrender. Not to age, but to doubt. The following years passed in a blur of compromises. I sold my car. "You don't need it anymore, Mom," Erin said. "We'll take you anywhere you need to go." Except they never did. Not unless it fit into their schedule. I stopped hosting dinners. "It's easier at our place," she insisted. I stopped gardening. "Your back can't handle that." I stopped decorating for holidays. "Let us do it. You just rest." Each time I let go of something, I told myself it was just practical. But practicality has a sharp edge. You only realize how deep it cuts when you try to reach for something and find it's no longer yours. Erin isn't cruel. Not in the ways people expect cruelty to look. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't hit. Her tools are silence, suggestion, dismissal. She's a master at minimizing. If I said something hurt me, she'd blink slowly and say, "Oh, I didn't mean it that way." As if my hurt was inconvenient, as if my feelings were a translation error. That's what made last night different. "You'll eat after everyone else," she said. Not with malice, with efficiency, with coldness so practiced it passed for logic. I wasn't part of the celebration. I was part of the staff. And when I stood up, took the roast, and left, she didn't stop me. Not even a murmur. Just silence, which told me everything. This morning, after my tea, I opened another box I hadn't looked into in years. Inside were Grace's letters. Real letters. Handwritten. Sealed. Stamped. She believed in paper. "Screens lie," she used to say. "Ink tells the truth." I read 3 of them. One was about Olivia's first piano recital. How nervous she'd been. How her hands shook before the first note. And how she smiled afterward like she'd climbed a mountain. Another was just a list of things Grace was grateful for that week. The third was harder. It was written after a scan, the one that showed the cancer had spread. "I'm not afraid of dying," she wrote. "I'm afraid of being forgotten." I folded the letter and held it close. "I haven't forgotten you, baby," I whispered. "I never will." I spent the afternoon writing a new letter, this one to Olivia. Not an apology, not a complaint, just a story, a slice of memory from when she was small and I taught her how to make a pie crust, her tiny hands covered in flour, her face stern with concentration. I ended it with, "You were always paying attention. I see that now. I just want you to know so was I." I sealed the envelope, wrote her name, and placed it by the door. Tomorrow, I'd give it to her in person. There's a kind of silence that comes not from peace, but from absence. That was the kind filling Erin's house the morning after I left. I imagined it while I boiled water for tea. How the children whispered over cereal. Unsure why Grandma's chair was empty. How Daniel, Erin's husband, glanced at her, waiting for an explanation. And how she, with all her talent for deflection, probably said nothing at all. Silence is easier than admitting your mother walked out on you with the main course under her arm. I sat on my porch with my tea, wrapped in an old cardigan Grace had given me the Christmas before Olivia was born. The elbows were thinned, one pocket coming loose at the seam, but it still smelled faintly of her favorite vanilla lotion. I watched a squirrel dart across the fence, then freeze mid-motion. Sensing I was watching, I smiled. I liked the company. Around 10, I heard Olivia's voice before I saw her. "Grandma." I stood up too quickly and felt the familiar pinch in my right knee. "Back here, sweetheart." She came around the side of the house holding a brown paper bag, hair tied up, cheeks flushed. "I brought pastries. she said. From that little place near the bookstore. The one you used to love. I nearly laughed. Used to, I still do. Come in. We sat at the kitchen table with warm cinnamon twists between us. Olivia poured the tea like she'd seen me do it 100 times. She probably had. She didn't ask questions at first, and I didn't rush to explain. We just ate slowly, like we had time. I saw Mom's face last night, she said finally. When she came back to the table, she looked hollow, like she didn't expect you to actually go. I sipped my tea. Neither did I. Until I did. I'm glad you did. She looked down at her hands. I wanted to say something, but it didn't feel like my place. It wasn't, I said. And yet here you are? She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She's not a bad person, you know. I know. But she treats you like a favor she's doing for the universe, like she expects applause for letting you exist in her house. I didn't say anything. I know that sounds harsh, she added. No, I said. It sounds accurate. We sat in that quiet agreement for a while. Then she pulled something out of her bag, a set of house keys. I made copies, she said. For emergencies. Sure, but also so I can come over whenever. You know, if you want. I took the keys, weighed them in my palm. 3 of them, one with a pink rubber cover. Do I get a say in the keychain? I teased. Olivia grinned. That's non-negotiable. We talked a while longer about school, about her job at the university library, about the neighbor's cat that kept getting into her apartment through the fire escape. She said its name was Clementine, and it had opinions about everything. When she left, I stood on the porch until her car turned the corner. Then I went back inside, sat at the table, and held the keys a little longer before placing them in the drawer where I kept the flashlight, extra batteries, and my old recipe cards. I thought I'd feel more alone, but I didn't. I felt contained, like I had stepped back into a shape that had always been mine. The rest of the day passed in small, deliberate motions. I gathered laundry, sorted it by hand, washed the dishes even though there were only a few, checked the mail even though I wasn't expecting anything. And then, late in the afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I opened my sewing box. The lid creaked. Inside were buttons, threads, fabric scraps, old pins dulled with time. I pulled out a piece of soft blue cotton I'd bought on impulse 2 years ago, planning to make Olivia a summer dress I never started. My fingers moved slower now, but the muscle memory returned. I didn't need to finish anything. Just begin. Just remind my hands they still knew how to create. Not just maintain. Outside, the sky turned that gentle bruised purple it gets just before night. And still the phone didn't ring. It was Olivia who first asked, "Do you think Mom even knows who you are anymore?" We were sitting in the living room, a pot of tea between us, sunlight slanting in through the lace curtains. She hadn't meant it as an attack, just a question, a genuine one, but it landed like a stone. I stirred my tea, not because it needed it, but because my hands needed something to do. I think she knows the version of me she decided to keep, I said. Olivia tilted her head. What does that mean? It means, I began slowly. She remembers the woman who packed her lunches and signed her field trip slips, the one who kept her clothes clean and her bed made. She remembers me through usefulness, through chores, through routine, but not through joy. Not through the things I loved before I became Mom full-time. Olivia leaned forward, chin resting on her hand. So what did you love? The question was simple, but I hadn't answered it in years. I loved dancing, I said after a pause. Ballroom mostly. I was on a college team for a year before I met your grandfather. And I loved old jazz records and lemon cookies and swimming at the quarry on the hottest days of July. I stopped, surprised at the sudden tightness in my chest. And I loved Sunday mornings when the house was quiet, and I'd sit by the window with a book, and nobody needed anything from me. Olivia smiled softly. I never knew that. Of course you didn't. Nobody ever asked. She looked like she was about to speak, but then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, winced, and turned it face down without answering. "Your mother—" She nodded. "She's been intense. Keeps asking where I am, if I've checked in with you, like she suddenly cares again. She doesn't like when things move without her permission. Control freak." "She doesn't think she is," I said. "That's the problem. She thinks she's saving people. She thinks she's protecting the family from embarrassment, from disorder, from God forbid discomfort." Olivia raised an eyebrow. By telling her own mother to wait until everyone else had eaten, I shrugged. That's the kind of comfort she believes in. Hierarchy. Performance. She wants her life to look clean on the outside, no matter what mold grows underneath. Olivia shook her head. "I don't want to turn into that." "You won't," I said, reaching for her hand. "You ask questions. You show up." She squeezed my fingers gently. That afternoon, we went for a walk just around the neighborhood. The air smelled like damp leaves and chimney smoke. Olivia carried a paper bag of cookies she'd picked up on the way, and we shared them as we walked. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Everything you gave up." I thought for a while. The sidewalk cracked beneath our feet. A crow called from a wire overhead. "I regret thinking it would be repaid." Olivia didn't answer right away. Then she said, "That's fair." When she dropped me off later, she hugged me tighter than usual. I watched her car disappear down the road, then went back inside and locked the door. Not from fear, but from choice. I liked knowing who I was letting in. That night, I sat by the radio and found a station that still played jazz, Coltrane specifically. I closed my eyes and remembered the smell of waxed floors, the weight of someone's hand on my waist, the thrill of turning in step with a rhythm larger than both of us. I didn't dance. Not really. Just swayed in place. But it was enough. The next morning, Erin came to the house. I saw her through the window, standing stiff on the porch, holding something in her arms. I didn't move right away. I let her knock twice. Then I opened the door. "Hi, Mom," she said. Her voice was too bright, too brittle. I nodded. "Erin," she held out a foil-covered dish. "I brought your Tupperware back, and some turkey from, well, what was left." I looked at it and didn't reach for it. "I have food," her smile faltered. "I just thought, why are you really here?" She bristled. "Is it so strange for me to visit?" "Yes," I said plainly. She looked past me into the house. "Olivia's been avoiding me. She's been here." "Yes." A pause. Erin took a breath. "Mom, I know things have been tense, but you have to understand there were guests. Expectations. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. You just didn't care if you were—" "That's not fair." "No," I said. "It's not. But it's true." We stood there for a few seconds, the air between us thick with things that had never been said. She held out the dish again. I didn't move. "I made a roast," I said quietly. Erin blinked. "What? I made a roast the night I left. I sat in my own kitchen, at my own table, and I ate it while it was still warm." She looked confused, like she couldn't decide if I was angry or proud. "Mom, I don't need your leftovers," I said gently. Then I closed the door. I didn't lock it after Erin left. I didn't need to. Some boundaries are stronger than deadbolts. I stood in the hallway a moment, holding on to the quiet. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. The old fear, the one that says you're being ungrateful, or she meant well, was gone. It had withered sometime between the front door and the first bite of that roast I ate alone. And like anything dead, it no longer held power. Later, I wrapped the dish she brought in a kitchen towel and walked it down the street to the church donation freezer. They take food quietly there. No questions, no paperwork, just a kind soul making sure nothing goes to waste. I placed the turkey inside, left the Tupperware, and walked home without looking back. By the time I returned, the kettle was still warm. That's when I knew what I had to do next. I'll now write part 2 of your story, 4,000 words, continuing where we left off and following the outline. For years, I'd let Aaron handle things. Bills, online accounts, renewals. It started small, a reminder to pay the electricity, a suggestion to link our phone plans. Then came the bank accounts. She convinced me to make her an authorized user on one in case something happens, then another. Then the automatic payments began, school fees for the kids, a portion of the groceries, even a monthly household help contribution that I never actually saw itemized. I didn't argue. I told myself I was being helpful, that families support each other, that she'd done so much for me by letting me live with them. Now all I could think was how cleverly she'd built the cage. Not out of cruelty, no, just entitlement. Quiet, subtle, and constant. I opened the drawers where I'd kept my records before moving in with Aaron. My name was still on all the accounts. The bank had changed their logo since I'd last handled things, but the core was the same. I called the branch directly. "Yes, Mrs. Holt," the young man said after confirming my identity. "You're still the primary holder on the savings and the joint checking. How can I help?" "I'd like to make some changes," I said, "but I'd rather do them in person." "Of course. Do you need any accommodations? We have assisted services if I can walk." I said, "Thank you." He hesitated. "We're open until 5. "I'll be there in an hour." I hung up and changed into slacks and a navy sweater. Something sturdy. Something mine. I pinned my silver beret into place. The one Grace always said made me look sharp and settled. Then I picked up my worn leather bag, slipped my notepad inside, and walked to the corner to catch the bus. It felt good to wait at the stop. Normal, grounded. Nobody chauffeuring me around like luggage. Nobody calling to ask where I was going. Just me, out in the world, doing something for myself. At the bank, the same young man who'd answered the phone greeted me at the counter. His name tag read Kevin. He smiled politely but looked slightly uneasy, like I might start crying or complaining at any moment. That's what they expect from women my age, tears or confusion. I gave him neither. "I'd like to remove an authorized user from 2 accounts, I said, laying my ID flat on the counter. He blinked. "Yes, of course. If you'll step into one of our offices, I'll get the forms." 10 minutes later, I sat at a polished desk, signing papers with steady hands. "Would you also like to revoke online access permissions?" he asked. "Yes, and automatic transfers. All of them." He paused, eyes flicking to the screen. "There's a recurring transfer of $450 every month to a school tuition account." "I know," I said. "Cancel it." Another pause. "There are also smaller ones. Subscriptions, home services, some rideshare activity. Do you recognize these?" "No, cancel everything." He nodded and began typing. "You'll receive confirmation emails later today." I handed him a new email address I'd made that morning. "Send them here." His fingers hesitated again. "Mrs. Holt, if I may?" "This is a significant change. Would you like us to flag the account in case someone tries to reestablish access without your consent?" I looked at him squarely. "Yes, flag it." When I was done, he walked me to the door. "Anything else I can do for you today?" I smiled. "You've already done more than you know." Outside, the wind had picked up. I pulled my sweater close. But I wasn't cold. Not really. My body was humming not from adrenaline, but from certainty. For the first time in a long time, I knew exactly whose name was on what. And that was only the beginning. I was halfway to the bus stop when my phone buzzed. Aaron. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it buzzed again with a text. "Mom, we need to talk. The tuition payment for Tyler's soccer program just bounced." "What's going on?" I didn't reply. Not yet. When I got home, I made tea and sat at the kitchen table with my old account statements spread before me. The numbers told a story Aaron wouldn't want to hear. 450s here, 200 there. Smaller withdrawals almost weekly. Nothing illegal. Nothing I hadn't technically authorized. But nothing I'd truly chosen, either. By dinner time, my phone had 6 missed calls and a dozen texts. I read them all but answered none. I needed to think clearly, without Aaron's voice in my ear telling me I was confused or overreacting. or her favorite being difficult. As I was washing my dinner plate, there was a sharp knock at the door. 3 quick raps. Unmistakably Erin's. I dried my hands slowly and went to answer. She didn't wait for an invitation, just pushed past me into the hallway. Her face was flushed. Her designer handbag clutched tight against her side like armor. "What did you do?" she demanded. "The bank says you've removed my access to your accounts. They wouldn't even tell me anything." I closed the door quietly. That's how privacy works. "Privacy? I'm your daughter. I've been managing your finances for years. You can't just—" "I can," I said. I did. She stared at me like I'd sprouted wings. "Mom, you're 79. You can barely use your email without help. How are you going to handle all this?" "The same way I did for the 60 years before you took over." Erin ran a hand through her hair, disheveling her perfect blowout. "Is this about the other night about the dinner? I already apologized for that." "No," I said. "You didn't," she faltered, just for a second. "Well, I'm sorry if you felt that's not an apology. That's deflection." Her eyes narrowed. "When did you get so confrontational?" "When I remembered I had something to confront." She took a deep breath, visibly trying to collect herself. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more calculated. "Mom, I'm worried about you. Living alone, managing everything by yourself, it's a lot. You're not as young as you used to be. None of us are. But there are practical considerations. What if you fall again? What if there's an emergency? Then I'll call 911 like anyone else." "This is ridiculous," her composure snapped. "You're acting like I've been taking advantage of you when all I've done is help. Who drove you to your doctor's appointments? Who made sure your prescriptions were filled? Who invited you into our home? And who made me eat in the kitchen while everyone else sat at the table?" She flinched. "That was one time. One mistake." "No," I said quietly. "It was the one time I saw clearly." Erin's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then back at me. "Daniel's waiting in the car." "We're not done with this conversation." "I am." She walked to the door, then turned. "The money I took, it wasn't for me. It was for your grandchildren, for their activities, their college funds, things you always said you wanted to help with." "I did. I do. But I want to choose how and when. Not have it decided for me." "Fine," she said, her voice tight. "I'll tell Tyler he can't go to soccer camp this summer. I'll explain that Grandma decided her independence was more important than his opportunities." The old me would have crumbled at that, would have rushed to fix it, to smooth things over, to make sure no one was disappointed, especially not at my expense. But that Beverly was gone. "You're a marketing executive. Erin, your husband is a real estate broker. You live in a 5-bedroom house with a pool. If Tyler misses soccer camp, it won't be because of my bank account." She left without another word, the door closing behind her with a decisive click. I sat in my chair by the window for a long time afterward, watching the evening settle over the neighborhood. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer effort of standing my ground. My phone buzzed again. A text from Olivia. "You okay? Grandma Mom just called me ranting about the bank." I typed back. "I'm fine. Better than fine. Having soup for dinner. Love you." She replied with a heart emoji. Simple. Enough. The lawyer's office smelled like lemon polish and old paper. I'd been there once before, years ago, when Walter and I drew up our wills after his first heart scare. The building was the same narrow hallways, scuffed molding, but the receptionist was new, and the chairs in the waiting area were now faux leather instead of velvet. The kind of change no one talks about, but you feel all the same. "Mrs. Holt?" The receptionist smiled. "You're here to see Mr. Porter. He's expecting you." She led me down a short corridor and into a small office with tall windows. The man behind the desk stood when I entered, grayer than I remembered, but his handshake was still strong. "Beverly," he said, motioning to the chair across from him. "It's been a while." "Yes, too long." He sat and folded his hands. "What brings you in?" I didn't hesitate. "I'd like to revise my will, and I want to set up a trust for my granddaughter." He blinked once. "All right." There was no judgment in his voice, just calm professionalism. which was exactly what I needed. You remember Grace, of course. She's gone now. Been gone a while. I'm sorry, I nodded once. She left a daughter, Olivia. I want to ensure that whatever I have left goes to her, not to my other daughter. He didn't flinch. We can do that. I also want to protect those assets while I'm still alive, I added. Olivia's young, but I trust her more than anyone else. I don't want Aaron or anyone else having access to anything in my name. Marcus opened a legal pad and began taking notes. We can create a living trust. You'll retain control as trustee, but designate Olivia as the beneficiary. That way, when the time comes, she'll inherit without going through probate. Good. I'd also recommend revoking any financial power of attorney that currently names Aaron. Already done, I said. The bank's been notified. Her access is gone. He glanced up, lips twitching into something between a smile and a nod of approval. I want the trust to include the house, I continued. All the accounts I still hold, any investments, everything. That's doable. We'll draw up a schedule of assets and transfer ownership into the trust entity. You'll still live in the home. Use the funds, but legally, the trust owns it. Perfect. He looked at me for a moment. Pen paused above the paper. May I ask what prompted this change? Beverly, I took a breath. She told me to eat after everyone else. His brow furrowed, then smoothed again. He didn't need the details. The sentence was enough. I see. She's been managing things for years. Not badly, but not kindly either. I let it happen. I thought I was being helpful. But lately, I've started remembering that I'm still a person. Not a duty. Not a wallet with a cardigan. He made a few more notes. There's something else you should know, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Erin contacted me last month about preparing guardianship documents for you. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Guardianship? Yes. She expressed concerns about your decision-making capacity. She mentioned a fall, some confusion with medications. I slipped in the bathroom last year. I was fine, and I've never confused my medications. He held up a hand. I'm just telling you what she said. I informed her that guardianship is a complex legal process requiring medical evaluations and court approval. It's not something I would pursue without clear evidence of incapacity. My throat felt dry. Did she have that evidence? No, she had concerns, which is different. But now that you're here, making clear and rational decisions about your assets, I'm even more convinced that guardianship would be inappropriate. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this new information. Erin hadn't just been controlling my money. She'd been preparing to control me entirely. What do I need to do? I asked finally. To protect yourself first, this trust we're setting up. Second, a new advance directive and healthcare proxy I'd suggest naming someone other than Erin. And third, I'd recommend getting a current evaluation from your primary care doctor confirming your cognitive health. Not because I doubt it, but because it creates a record if things get contentious. And will they get contentious? Marcus sighed. When money and control are involved, family dynamics can get complicated. I'm not saying Erin would challenge this legally, but it's best to be prepared. I nodded, feeling a new weight settling on my shoulders. This wasn't just about bank accounts anymore. This was about my autonomy, my personhood. I don't want this to be a punishment, I said. I just want to be clear about where I stand. I want Olivia to have what I built, not what someone else siphoned off. She'll have it. The appointment took another hour. By the time we finished reviewing forms and outlining contingencies, I felt steadier than I had in months. As Marcus slid the draft papers into a folder, he looked at me with quiet respect. Most people wait too long, he said, until they've already been drained. I waited long enough. He stood to walk me out. When everything's finalized, I'll call you, but you'll need to come in again for signatures. I'll be here. Outside, the sky had turned slate gray, and the air smelled like rain. I didn't rush. I walked past the pharmacy, past the bakery, past the tiny park with the rusted swing set. I sat on a bench under the trees and just breathed for a while. There's something strange about reclaiming control after giving it away for so long. It doesn't feel triumphant. It feels quiet, like adjusting your posture after years of leaning the wrong way. My phone buzzed. A message from Olivia. "Everything okay, Grandma?" I typed back. "It's starting to be." Then I slid the phone into my pocket and listened to the wind in the leaves. I knew I'd set something in motion that couldn't be easily stopped, but I wasn't prepared for how quickly things would escalate. The morning after my meeting with Marcus, I woke to find Daniel's silver SUV parked in front of my house. Not Aaron's car. Daniel's. That was deliberate. He was sitting on my porch when I opened the door, his normally confident posture slumped, his face drawn. He stood when he saw me. "Beverly," he said, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I hope it's not too early." "It's not," I said, not inviting him in just yet. "What brings you here? Daniel?" He ran a hand over his close-cropped hair. "I was hoping we could talk. Just us." I studied him for a moment. Daniel Holt had always been pleasant enough, charming at family gatherings, generous with gifts at Christmas, but in 15 years of marriage to my daughter, we'd never had a one-on-one conversation that lasted more than 5 minutes. "Come in," I said finally. "I'll make coffee." In the kitchen, he sat awkwardly at the table while I prepared the coffee pot. The silence stretched between us until the machine started to gurgle. "Aaron doesn't know I'm here," he said abruptly. "I figured as much." "She's upset." "I know." He shifted in his seat. "Look, Beverly, I'm not here to take sides, but this situation is getting out of hand. Aaron's talking about legal action, about doctors' evaluations, about guardianship," I finished. "Yes, Marcus told me." Daniel looked surprised. "You've already seen a lawyer. Yesterday." He exhaled slowly. "Then you understand how serious this is." I placed a mug of coffee in front of him and sat down with my own. "I understand that my daughter is upset because I've taken back control of my own money. What I don't understand is why that requires legal action." Daniel stared into his coffee. "It's not just about the money. Beverly, Aaron's worried about you, living alone, making major financial decisions without consultation." "Without her permission, you mean?" He winced. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I took a sip of my coffee. "Daniel, I'm going to ask you something. And I want an honest answer. Not what Aaron told you to say. Not what you think will smooth things over. Just the truth. Can you do that?" He nodded hesitantly. "Are you and Aaron in financial trouble?" His face flushed. "What? No, we're fine. The market's been a bit slow. But because $450 a month for Tyler's soccer seems excessive, and there were a lot of other withdrawals from my accounts that I never authorized. Small ones. Regular ones." Daniel's eyes dropped to the table. "The market's been more than a bit slow," he admitted. "And Aaron's company did layoffs last quarter. She kept her job, but they cut bonuses. We've had to adjust. By using my money." "It wasn't like that," he said quickly. "We were going to pay it back. Aaron just didn't want to worry you with our temporary cash flow issues." I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. So all this concern about my mental capacity, about me living alone, it's really about keeping access to my accounts. "No," Daniel said, but there was no conviction in his voice. "Aaron does worry about you. We both do. Just not enough to let me eat at the table with your clients." He had the grace to look ashamed. "That was wrong. I told her so after you left." I raised an eyebrow. "Did you before or after you realized the roast was gone?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "After. But I would have said it anyway." We sat in silence for a moment, the coffee cooling between us. "What do you want, Daniel?" I asked finally. "Why are you really here?" He sighed heavily. "Honestly, to understand what's happening. Erin came home yesterday talking about lawyers and trusts and cutting her out of the will. She's convinced you've lost your mind. But sitting here with you seem perfectly fine to me. Better than fine. You seem clearer than I've seen you in years." "I am. So what changed?" "I did," I said simply. "Or rather, I remembered who I was before I let Aaron start making all my decisions." Daniel nodded slowly. "I get that. I do." He hesitated, then added, "But this trust, this new will cutting Aaron out completely." "Isn't that extreme? I'm not cutting her out of my life. Daniel, just my bank accounts. There's a difference. She won't see it that way. That's her choice. He drained his coffee and stood. I should go. Aaron thinks I'm at the gym. I walked him to the door. As he stepped onto the porch, he turned back. For what it's worth, Beverly, I think you're doing the right thing, standing up for yourself. I just wish it didn't have to be so adversarial. So do I said. But I didn't make it that way. After he left, I sat back at the kitchen table, thinking about what he'd said. Financial troubles. That explained some things, but not everything. Not the slow erosion of my independence over years. Not the subtle dismissals. Not you'll eat after everyone else. My phone buzzed with a text. Not Aaron this time, but Tyler, her 16-year-old son. Grandma, can I come over after school, just to talk? I smiled at the screen. Of course, sweetheart. I'll have cookies. Maybe not everything was broken after all. Tyler arrived at 3:30, still in his school clothes, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He'd grown taller since I'd last really looked at him approaching his father's height, with the same strong jawline but Grace's gentle eyes. It was strange how genetics shuffled the deck, dealing out features from both sides of the family. Hey, Grandma, he said, giving me a quick hug before dropping onto the couch. Thanks for letting me come over. You never need permission, I told him, setting a plate of cookies on the coffee table. This is still your grandma's house. He grabbed a cookie and took a bite. These are real, he said, sounding surprised. Like you made them, as opposed to what Mom always buys the ones from the bakery and puts them on a plate like she made them. I laughed. Well, don't tell her I told you that. He grinned. Then his face grew serious. So, what's going on with you and Mom? She's been crazy lately. All these hushed phone calls with Dad, talking about lawyers and doctors and stuff. I sighed. It's complicated, Tyler. I'm 16, not 6. I can handle complicated. I studied him for a moment, then nodded. Your mother and I disagree about whether I can manage my own affairs. My money, my house, my decisions. Because of your fall last year. Partly, but it's more than that. It's about control. Who has it? Who doesn't? He considered this, taking another cookie. Is that why you took the roast and left Mom wouldn't really talk about it? Just said you weren't feeling well. I was feeling perfectly well, just not particularly welcome. Tyler looked down at his hands. She told you to eat in the kitchen, didn't she? While the Hamiltons were there. You knew about that, he nodded. I heard her telling you. I wanted to say something, but he trailed off, embarrassed. It wasn't your place, I said gently. It was between your mother and me. Still, it was messed up. We sat in comfortable silence for a minute. Then Tyler asked, Are you really changing your will, giving everything to Olivia? Word traveled fast. I'm making some changes. Yes. Because you're mad at Mom. No, I said. Because I want to make my own choices about my own things. And right now, I trust Olivia to respect those choices. He nodded slowly. That makes sense. Then, with the directness of youth, I'm not mad, even if it means I don't get anything. I just wanted you to know that. My heart swelled. Tyler Holt, you are a remarkable young man. He blushed. Nah, a sudden wave of dizziness washed over me, cutting him off. The room tilted, and I gripped the arm of my chair. Grandma? Tyler's voice sounded far away. Are you okay? I tried to nod, but the movement made the dizziness worse. Just a little lightheaded, I managed. It'll pass. But it didn't. The edges of my vision began to darken, and I felt myself sliding sideways. Grandma Tyler was at my side in an instant, his strong young arms keeping me from falling to the floor. What's happening? Should I call 911? No, I said, the word coming out weaker than I intended. Just help me lie down. Blood pressure. Drops sometimes. He guided me to the couch, lifting my legs onto the cushions. I'm calling someone, he said firmly. Mom or Dad or... Not your mother, I said, closing my eyes against the spinning room. Please, I heard him on the phone, his voice steady despite the worry. Olivia, It's Tyler. I'm at Grandma's and something's wrong. She almost fainted. No, she doesn't want me to call Mom. Okay, 15 minutes, I'll stay with her. He knelt beside the couch, taking my hand. Olivia's coming. Just rest. Okay, can I get you some water or something? I nodded carefully. Water would be good, and my Pills blue bottle in the bathroom cabinet. While he was gone, I tried to assess myself honestly. The dizziness was receding, but it had been severe, worse than the usual orthostatic hypotension I sometimes experienced when standing too quickly. This was different. Concerning. Tyler returned with water and my medication. I took it gratefully, the familiar routine bringing some comfort. Have you eaten today? He asked, surprising me with his practicality. I tried to remember. Tea this morning, a piece of toast. Grandma, it's almost 4. That's not enough. He went to the kitchen and returned with an apple and some cheese on a plate. Eat this, slowly. I did as I was told, smiling despite myself at being mothered by my grandson. By the time Olivia arrived, breathless and worried, the worst had passed. But the incident had shaken me not just physically, but in my newfound confidence. My body had betrayed me at exactly the wrong moment, providing ammunition for Aaron's argument that I couldn't manage on my own. What happened? Olivia asked, sitting beside me and checking my pulse with practiced fingers. She'd worked as a nursing assistant during undergrad. Just a dizzy spell, I said. Blood pressure, probably. When was the last time you saw your doctor? She asked. A few months ago, before I moved in with your mother. She frowned. We should make an appointment. Get you checked out. Aaron will use this, I said quietly. She'll say it proves I can't live alone. Olivia's expression hardened. One dizzy spell doesn't mean you need a guardian. Grandma, it means you need a banana and maybe an adjustment to your medication. Tyler, who'd been hovering anxiously, spoke up. I won't tell Mom, if that's what you're worried about. I looked at him, surprised. I wouldn't ask you to keep secrets from your mother. Tyler, it's not a secret, he said. It's just private. Your health is your business. Olivia nodded approvingly at her cousin. Exactly. But Grandma, we do need to make sure you're okay. Medically. I sighed. I know. I'll call Dr. Wilson tomorrow. I'll drive you, Olivia offered. No arguments. As they fussed over me, making sure I ate more, checking my pill organizer to ensure I hadn't missed any doses, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Gratitude for their care, frustration at my body's limitations, and beneath it all, a nagging fear. What if Aaron was right? Not about the control, not about the money, but about me living alone. What if today wasn't just a blip, but a warning? Olivia seemed to read my thoughts. Stop it, she said, sitting beside me. Whatever you're thinking, stop. One bad day doesn't erase a lifetime of independence. But if it happens again when I'm alone, then we'll figure it out, she said firmly. There are solutions between completely on your own and surrendering all control to Mom. We just need to find the right one for you. Tyler nodded. Like those medical alert things. I've fallen and I can't get up. He quoted in an exaggerated old lady voice, then looked mortified. Sorry, but I was laughing, the tension broken. It's fine, and you're right. There are options. As the evening settled around us, the three of us sat in my living room, eating the simple dinner Olivia prepared. No fancy china, no performance, no hierarchy. Just family, supporting each other through a moment of vulnerability. It wasn't perfect. My body still felt fragile, and the questions about my future remained unanswered. But for now, it was enough to know I wasn't facing them alone. You two should go home, I said eventually. I'm feeling much better, and it's getting late. I'm staying, Olivia said, in a tone that brooked no argument. Just for tonight. Tyler stood reluctantly. I should get back. Mom will be wondering where I am. I squeezed his hand. Thank you for being here today. For helping me. He shrugged, embarrassed by the praise. That's what family does, right? As I watched him leave, I thought about his words. That's what family does. Not control, not diminish. Support, respect. Show up when needed. It was a simple lesson, but one Aaron seemed to have forgotten somewhere along the way. I'll now write part 3 of your story, 4,000 words, completing the narrative according to the outline. The papers were ready within a week. I returned to Marcus Porter's office on a Thursday morning. The sky was clear for once, sunlight pooling like gold on the sidewalks, but the wind still had bite. I wore my wool coat, the one Grace bought me the year she got her promotion. She said it made me look like someone who doesn't ask for permission. I folded it neatly over the back of the chair in Marcus's office as he laid out the documents across the desk. There's the will revision, he began, tapping each page gently. Here's the trust agreement. Olivia is named as sole beneficiary. You're the trustee. The house, accounts, and investment funds are listed in the Schedule A attachment. And here, he paused, is the formal revocation of financial power of attorney. He slid a thick envelope marked Aaron Holt across the desk. It was already addressed and stamped. She'll receive a copy, he confirmed. Along with the cease letter, she'll have no legal standing to act on your behalf moving forward. I took the pen. My hands didn't shake. I signed every page slowly, deliberately, watching the ink curve behind me like a trail I could finally see forming in real time. When we finished, Marcus gathered everything and slipped the signed documents into a large binder. That's it, he said. You're no longer operating under assumption or habit. Everything's legally yours again. I nodded. Good. There is one more thing, he said, opening a small drawer. Do you want to include a medical directive, someone to speak for you, if you can't? I didn't hesitate. Olivia, she's under 30, he warned gently. That's fine by law, but emotionally, she's the only one who still asks what I want. He nodded and slid the form across the table. We finished in under 20 minutes. When I stood to leave, Marcus offered me the binder. Keep this somewhere safe and let Olivia know where it is. I will. And Beverly, I turned. You're not just reclaiming things, you're protecting them. There's a difference. I nodded. That's exactly what I'm doing. I took the long way home. I passed Aaron's neighborhood and didn't turn in. I passed the school where Olivia once played violin in the 3rd grade concert. I passed the hardware store where Walter used to buy nails he didn't need just to talk to the owner. When I reached my house, I felt it in a new way, not as a burden, not as a museum, but as shelter, a stronghold, mine. I placed the binder in the drawer with the emergency flashlight and the spare checkbook. Then I sat at the kitchen table and wrote Olivia a letter. Not dramatic, not emotional, just instructions. Where the binder was, who to call, what to do if and when. When I finished, I tucked the letter into an envelope and wrote her name in block letters across the front. Then I placed it under the old cookie jar, the one she always lifts when she visits, as if I might have left something sweet inside. I stood by the window for a while, sipping tea, watching the late autumn light shift across the yard. The phone rang once, then again. I let it go. 5 minutes later, a text came through. Aaron, we need to talk. It's important. I deleted it without reading further. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I pulled out my planner and started making lists. Not lists of chores or duties, lists of things I wanted. A new pair of walking shoes. A small raised garden bed for spring. A trip. Just a weekend somewhere with water. Not big things. Not fancy things. Just mine. That night, for the first time in years, I locked the door from the inside, not out of fear, but as a quiet declaration. I was home. The next morning, I found an unexpected envelope in my mailbox, cream-colored, addressed in wide, loopy cursive I didn't immediately recognize. I nearly tossed it with the flyers and coupon mailers. Only the return address stopped me. Eleanor Hayes. I hadn't heard that name in over 30 years. We'd lived 2 houses apart when the girls were little. She had twin boys, both loud and fast, always tracking mud through her kitchen. We used to sit on her back steps, drinking coffee while the kids turned the backyard into a war zone. She smoked menthols and wore her hair in a braid that hung down her back like a rope. She moved after her husband got transferred to Idaho. We promised to write. We didn't. I opened the letter at the kitchen table. already steeping tea. The paper was thick, the ink a little faded. "Bevy," it began. "I saw your name in the church bulletin. They said you'd spoken at a memorial fundraiser for Grace last spring. I couldn't believe it. I'm sorry it took me so long to find the right words. But when I saw your name again, I knew I had to reach out." She remembered Grace, remembered her laugh, remembered her drawing pictures on the sidewalk with chalk and insisting they were inventions. She wrote about her boys, one now a teacher, the other working in forestry. She had grandkids, a dog, a new hip. She said she was slower now, but not done yet. Then, near the end, "I still remember the woman who danced barefoot in the rain on your 40th birthday, the one who said, 'If the world's already wet, you may as well move with it. I hope you've kept dancing, and if not, well, it's never too late.'" I put the letter down and felt something soft and old press into my chest, not sadness, not quite nostalgia, just recognition. I had forgotten that woman. She wasn't a fantasy or a version of myself from a dream. She was real. She lived here once, in this body, with these hands. And I'd buried her under years of "Is dinner ready?" and "Can you pick up the kids?" and "You're just being sensitive." "Mom?" I stood up, crossed the kitchen, and opened the drawer where I kept old tea towels. At the very back, folded tight, was a CD Rachel had burned for me years ago. "Grandma's Jazz," written in silver marker. I didn't even know if it would play anymore, but I pulled out the old stereo, dusted it off, and tried. It crackled, then caught. Nina Simone's voice filled the room, low and deep like honey turning in the spoon. I stood by the window, arms crossed, just listening. Then I let myself sway, just a little. The floor creaked beneath me, and my knees didn't love the movement, but I moved anyway. In my socks, with no one watching, with no performance. It wasn't dancing, not really, but maybe it was close enough. I wrote Eleanor back that same afternoon. I told her thank you for remembering, for seeing, for naming the version of me I had forgotten. I told her about Grace, about Olivia, about the roast I carried out the front door like an offering to my old self. I didn't mention Aaron. I didn't need to. I ended the letter with a line she'd once said to me after I'd spilled coffee on a new dress and nearly cried over it. "You're allowed to be messy. Just don't pretend it's someone else's mess." I'd never forgotten that, even if I forgot everything else. When I walked to the mailbox, the wind picked up cold and fast, but not punishing. Eleanor's letter had sparked something in me, a recognition that life could still surprise you, even at 79. That old connections could resurface when you least expected them, that maybe there were other things I'd forgotten, other joys I could reclaim. That night, I called a real estate agent. Not Daniel someone new, someone with no connection to my family. I had a different kind of move in mind. I signed the lease on a Tuesday. It was a small apartment, 2 rooms and a kitchen on the 2nd floor of a quiet building near the park. Nothing grand, nothing polished, but the windows faced east, and the light poured in like honey each morning. That mattered more than granite countertops ever could. The landlord, Mr. Patel, was kind. He helped carry the boxes up the narrow stairs and showed me where the breaker panel was, just in case. When I asked about painting the kitchen cabinets, he shrugged and said, "As long as you don't pick black, I trust you." I chose sage green. Olivia helped me settle in. We made a day of it, unpacking slowly, drinking iced tea from mismatched mugs, laughing when we found things I didn't even remember owning. She hung a small framed print above the sink, a lemon tree, soft and faded. "It looks like you," she said. "Rooted, but still growing." I smiled. That's nicer than being called hardy. We spent the afternoon arranging the bookshelves. Grace's letters went into a wooden box that now lived on the side table, close enough to touch. By evening, Olivia had to leave. Before she did, she placed a plant, a trailing rose, on the windowsill. "Every woman needs a plant," she said. "It's proof you can still nurture something." After she left, I sat on the couch and listened to the new quiet, different from the silence in Aaron's house. This one didn't press. It welcomed. It asked nothing. I made a simple dinner. Sautéed spinach, a boiled egg, toast. I ate it slowly, watching the shadows climb the opposite wall. No one asked why there weren't more sides. No one criticized the softness of the yolk. The next morning, I met my neighbor. Her name was Ruth Williams, 83, and she walked with a cane that had floral stickers all over the shaft. "You're the new one," she said, eyeing me like a shopkeeper does a fresh shipment. "I suppose I am." She nodded toward my door. "Don't put out trash before 5. They'll fine us. And the lady in 2B feeds the squirrels. But don't tell management. I like her too much to see her evicted." I smiled. "Thanks for the warning." She leaned in, lowering her voice. "You divorced? No, widowed." She tilted her head. "Then what brings you here?" I didn't hesitate. I remembered I'm allowed to live on my own terms. Her lips twitched. "Well, it's about time." We stood in the hallway talking for 20 minutes, about arthritis, old movies, and which market had the best produce. She reminded me a little of myself sharp when she needed to be but kind underneath. A woman who'd weathered more than she let on. That afternoon, I rearranged the silverware drawer not because it was wrong, just because I could. I placed forks in the front, knives at the back. It made no logical sense, but it pleased me. Later, I took a walk around the block. Just once, enough to feel the air on my skin, enough to feel like part of the day. And when I returned, there were no expectations waiting for me. Just the warm hum of the radiator, just the lemon tree above the sink, just me and my space with no one asking what I was doing there. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was visiting my own life. Of course, independence came with challenges. There were nights when my joints ached so badly I could barely sleep. Mornings when I stared at my pill organizer, trying to remember if I'd already taken the little blue one. Times when I needed groceries, but the weather was too treacherous for walking. Ruth became an unexpected ally. We developed a system knocking on the wall we shared if we needed something. 3 quick taps meant, "I'm fine, just checking." 2 slow ones meant, "Come when you can." 1 long one meant, "Emergency." We never had to use that last one, thank God, but knowing it was there brought comfort. Olivia visited twice a week, sometimes more. She brought groceries, helped with laundry, took me to doctor's appointments, but she never took over, never assumed. Always asked, "What do you need?" Not, "This is what you need." The difference was everything. My dizzy spells continued occasionally, but Dr. Wilson adjusted my medication, and I learned to recognize the warning signs. I wore the medical alert pendant Olivia insisted on, though I kept it hidden under my blouse most days. Not vanity, just a small rebellion against being defined by potential frailty. Some days were harder than others. Some mornings I woke to stiffness so severe, I wondered if Aaron had been right if I was being foolish, trying to live alone at my age. But then I'd make my own tea exactly how I liked it, play my music as loud as I wanted, and leave dishes in the sink if I felt like it. And the doubt would recede, replaced by quiet certainty. This was worth the struggle. This was mine. Erin didn't call for 3 weeks after I moved. When she finally did, her voice was tight, controlled. "So you've moved," she said, as if I might have forgotten. Without telling me, "Yes." I had to hear it from Tyler. "My own son knew where you were living before I did." I didn't respond to that. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound defensive. "Is this really necessary?" "Mom," she continued, "this dramatic statement you're making. It's not a statement. Erin, it's a choice. A choice to what, live in some tiny apartment when you could have your own room in our home, deal with everything alone when we could be helping you." "I'm not alone," I said. "I have friends. I have Olivia. I have myself." She made a small, frustrated sound. "This is ridiculous. You had a serious dizzy spell just last month. What happens when you fall and there's no one there? The same thing that happens to anyone who lives alone. I use my alert button. I call for help. And if you can't, then I deal with the consequences of my choice," I said, "just like I've been doing my whole life." The line went quiet for a moment. Then, in a softer voice, "I'm trying to understand. Mom, I really am. But it feels like you're punishing me for trying to take care of you." For the first time, I heard something genuine in her tone. Not manipulation, not control, actual hurt. "I'm not punishing you, Aaron," I said gently. "I'm choosing myself. There's a difference. Can I at least see this place? Make sure it's suitable?" I hesitated. "Not yet. I need time to settle in. To make it mine before it becomes someplace you've evaluated." She didn't like that. I could tell. But surprisingly, she didn't push. "Fine," she said. "But I'm calling to check on you. Regularly." "I'd like that," I said, and meant it. After we hung up, I sat on my small balcony, watching the evening settle over the park across the street. Our conversation had been brief, stilted, but it was a start. Not reconciliation, not yet, but acknowledgement. That would have to be enough for now. Erin kept her word. She called every Sunday afternoon, precisely at 2. Our conversations were cautious, circling around weather and Tyler's soccer tournaments and Daniel's latest listings, never touching the deeper currents that had pushed us apart, never mentioning the trust, the will, the power of attorney. It was a fragile peace, but peace nonetheless. Then came the invitation, a family dinner at Erin's house. "Just us," she said. "You, me, Daniel, Tyler, and Olivia. If she's free." I was surprised by the inclusion of Olivia. Erin and her niece had never been particularly close, their relationship strained by the shadow of Grace's absence. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "Does there need to be one? I thought it would be nice to have everyone together." "It's been a while." Something in her voice sounded too carefully casual, but I agreed anyway. "That would be lovely. What can I bring?" "Just yourself," she said. "We'll handle everything." I should have known then that something was off. Erin never passed up an opportunity to delegate. The evening of the dinner, Olivia picked me up at my apartment. She looked tense, her usual easy smile replaced by something more guarded. "You okay?" I asked as we drove. She nodded too quickly. "Fine, just a long day at work." "Olivia Johnson, you've never been able to lie to me. What's going on?" She gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Aunt Erin called me yesterday. She wanted to coordinate before the dinner tonight." "Coordinate what?" Olivia glanced at me, then back at the road. "She said she's worried about you, that living alone isn't working, that you've been having more dizzy spells than you're admitting. That's not true." "I know that," she said. "I'm the one who takes you to your doctor's appointments, remember? But she made it sound like you're one fall away from a nursing home." I felt a chill despite the warm car. "And what did she want from you?" "To present a united front tonight, to help convince you that it's time to move back in with them." Now it made sense, the dinner, the careful inclusion of Olivia. Erin was staging an intervention. "What did you tell her?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Olivia's jaw tightened. "I told her that you're doing fine on your own, that you have a support system, that your doctor is happy with your progress, and that I would never pressure you into a living situation that makes you unhappy." "I bet that went over well," she snorted. "About as well as you'd expect." "She said I was being irresponsible, that I didn't understand the liability of letting you live alone." "Liability," I repeated. "That's an interesting choice of words." "Yeah, I thought so too." We drove in silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. As we turned onto Erin's street, I reached over and squeezed Olivia's arm. "Thank you," I said, "for standing up for me." She gave me a quick smile. "Always, Grandma." Erin's house was exactly as I remembered it, immaculate, expensive, cold, the kind of place where you're afraid to put your glass down without a coaster. She greeted us at the door with perfect hostess smile, air kissing my cheek and giving Olivia a stiff hug. "Everyone's in the living room," she said, leading the way. "Mom, you remember Dr. Harmon? He was at the Hamiltons' dinner party." I hadn't noticed the extra car in the driveway, but there he was, a tall man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, rising from the sofa with a practiced smile. "Dr. Richard Harmon. Not my doctor. A stranger." I stopped in the doorway. "What is this, Erin?" Her smile didn't waver. "Just dinner, Mom. Dr. Harmon is an old friend of Daniel's from college. He happened to be in town. and we thought it would be nice to include him. A lie. I could see it in the tightness around her eyes, in the way Daniel wouldn't quite look at me, in Tyler's uncomfortable fidgeting on the edge of the sofa. Olivia stepped closer to me, her voice low. "We can leave if you want. Grandma?" "No," I said, matching her volume. "I want to hear what they have to say." Dinner was a stilted affair. Dr. Harmon dominated the conversation with stories about his practice in Chicago, his research on geriatric care, his thoughts on supporting seniors and maintaining their quality of life, never directly addressing me, but making his expertise clear. Setting the stage. It wasn't until dessert, a store-bought cheesecake that Erin had carefully transferred to her own serving plate, that she finally made her move. "Mom," she said, setting down her fork, "we need to talk about your living situation." Here it was. I took a sip of water, steadying myself. "What about it? We're concerned, all of us." She gestured around the table, though Tyler looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. "Living alone at your age, with your health issues, it's just not safe." "My health is fine," I said. "Dr. Wilson says so." "General practitioners aren't specialists," Dr. Harmon interjected smoothly. "They often miss subtle signs of cognitive decline." I turned to him, keeping my voice even. "And you've diagnosed this decline based on what exactly? The way I hold my fork? The fact that I can follow your tedious stories about golf?" His smile faltered. Olivia coughed to hide a laugh. Erin pressed on. "Mom, please, this isn't an attack. We love you. We want what's best for you." "No," I said. "You want what's easiest for you. There's a difference." Daniel spoke up for the first time. "Beverly, that's not fair. Erin has been worried sick about you. We all have." "Really?" I looked around the table. "Is that why you invited a geriatric specialist to dinner without telling me? Because you're worried?" "Dr. Harmon is here as a friend," Erin insisted. "But yes, he has offered to do an evaluation, just to make sure everything's okay." "An evaluation?" I repeated. "For guardianship proceedings, I assume." The table went silent. Erin's face drained of color. "How did you—" "Marcus Porter told me weeks ago about your inquiry into declaring me incompetent." Daniel looked genuinely shocked. "Erin, you said you were just gathering information. You didn't mention legal proceedings." She shot him a warning look. "I was exploring options, that's all." Olivia stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the hardwood. "This is unbelievable. You invite us to dinner under false pretenses, ambush Grandma with some doctor friend, and now we find out you've been plotting to take away her legal rights." "I wasn't plotting anything," Erin snapped. "I was trying to protect her from what Olivia demanded, making her own decisions, living her own life." Erin turned to me, her composure cracking. "You changed your will. You put everything in a trust for Olivia. You cut me out completely. After everything I've done for you." So that was it. Not concern for my welfare, but fear of losing her inheritance. I should have been hurt, but all I felt was tired. Tired of the manipulation. Tired of the performance. "I didn't cut you out of my life, Erin," I said quietly. "Just my bank accounts. There's a difference." "Why?" Her voice broke. "Why do you trust her more than me? She's barely even family." Olivia flinched as if slapped. Tyler, who had been silent throughout the exchange, suddenly spoke up. "Mom, that's a terrible thing to say. Olivia is Grace's daughter. She's as much family as any of us." Erin blinked, surprised by her son's intervention. "I didn't mean—" "You did," he said. "And it's not okay." Dr. Harmon cleared his throat awkwardly. "Perhaps I should excuse myself. This seems like a family matter." "Yes," I agreed. "It is." After he left, the five of us sat in uncomfortable silence. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Beverly, regardless of how this happened, we are genuinely concerned about you. The dizzy spells. Living alone at your age, it's not unreasonable for us to worry." "I understand that," I said. "But there's a difference between worry and control, between offering help and demanding compliance. What do you want from us? Mom? Erin asked, her voice small. What would make this right? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Behind the perfect makeup and designer clothes, I could still see traces of the little girl who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms, who used to need me, who somewhere along the way decided that need was a weakness to be conquered. I want you to see me, I said simply, not as a burden to manage or an asset to control, just as your mother. A person with her own wishes and dignity. Erin's eyes filled with tears. I do see you. No, I said gently. You see a problem to solve, a responsibility, not me. Olivia placed her hand on mine. Maybe we should go. Grandma, this has been a lot. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. As we stood to leave, Tyler came around the table and hugged me tightly. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know about any of this. I know, sweetheart. It's not your fault. At the door, I turned back to Erin and Daniel. I'm not closing the door on our relationship, I said. But things need to change if we're going to move forward. Erin nodded, wiping away a tear. What things? Respect, honesty, acceptance that I'm going to live my life my way, for whatever time I have left. She didn't answer, but something in her eyes shifted. A crack in the perfect facade. Maybe, just maybe, a beginning. 3 weeks passed before I heard from Erin again. Not a call this time, but a text. Can we talk, just us? No agenda, no doctors, no lawyers. Please. I replied, my apartment. Tomorrow at 2. I'll make tea. When she arrived, I hardly recognized her. Gone was the perfect blowout, the designer outfit, the immaculate makeup. Instead, she wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger, more like Grace. Nice place, she said, glancing around the apartment. It suits you. Thank you. The light is perfect for my plants. She noticed the lemon tree print above the sink and smiled faintly. Olivia's choice. How did you know she always loved citrus? Used to steal lemons from Mrs. Parker's tree and eat them like oranges. It was such a small detail, but it surprised me that Erin had noticed, had remembered. Maybe she paid more attention than I gave her credit for. We sat at my small kitchen table with mugs of tea between us. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then Erin took a deep breath. I've been seeing someone, she said. A therapist, since the dinner. This was unexpected. That's good, I said cautiously. She nodded. It's been illuminating. Painful, but illuminating. She traced the rim of her mug with one finger. She thinks I have control issues. Despite everything, I had to smile. I'm shocked. Erin looked up, startled, then gave a reluctant laugh. Okay, I deserved that. What else did she say, this therapist of yours? That I've been trying to manage everyone around me to avoid feeling helpless, like I felt when Dad died, when Grace got sick. She swallowed hard. When you started getting older. I reached across the table and took her hand. I am getting older, Erin. That's not something you can fix or control. I know. Logically, I know that. But every time you had a dizzy spell or forgot something, all I could think was, I'm losing her too. And instead of just being scared, I tried to take over. To make it better the only way I knew how. By controlling everything. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't see it as control. I saw it as helping, as being the responsible one. You've always been responsible, I said. Even as a child, always making lists, organizing your toys, worrying about the future. Grace was the opposite, Erin said softly. Always in the moment, never worried about tomorrow. You balanced each other. She wiped away a tear. I miss her. Every day. So do I. We sat in silence for a moment, both lost in memories of the daughter and sister we'd loved and lost. Then Erin squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. For treating you like a problem to solve instead of a person to love. For the dinner that night. For telling you to eat after everyone else. I was so caught up in impressing the Hamiltons, in making everything perfect, that I forgot what really matters. "And what's that family?" she said simply. "Not how it looks, but how it feels, how we treat each other." I felt something tight in my chest begin to loosen. "Thank you for saying that." She took another deep breath. "I also want you to know that I've spoken to Marcus Porter. I've formally withdrawn any inquiry into guardianship. It was wrong of me to even consider it." Yes, it was. "And I understand about the trust, about the will. I don't agree with it. I still think Tyler should have some consideration, but it's your money, your choice." This was progress, but not quite understanding. "It's not about cutting Tyler out, Aaron. It's about trusting that Olivia will honor my wishes, including taking care of Tyler if needed." She nodded slowly. "I get that now. I think." She hesitated, then added, "I've been talking to Olivia too, trying to rebuild there." "How's that going?" "Awkwardly," she admitted. "But we're trying. She's a lot like Grace." "Yes, she is." Erin looked around the apartment again, her eyes catching on the small details, the rearranged silverware drawer I'd left open, the plant on the windowsill, the jazz CD next to the stereo. "You seem happy here," she said, sounding almost surprised. "I am. Even with the stairs, your knees." "I manage," I said. "And when I can't, I'll adapt. That's what independence means. Aaron, not doing everything alone, but making my own choices about when and how to accept help." She absorbed this, then nodded. "I'd like to be part of that help. When you want it, if you want it." It was a generous offer, a humble one, so unlike the Aaron of a few months ago. "I'd like that," I said. "On some conditions." "Name them." "You ask. You don't tell. You offer. You don't assume. And most importantly, you remember that helping me doesn't give you the right to control me." She smiled ruefully. "My therapist said almost exactly the same thing." "Smart woman." "She is." Aaron hesitated, then asked, "Would you be willing to meet her sometime? She thinks family sessions might help us establish better patterns." A month ago, I would have seen this as another attempt to put me under professional scrutiny. Now, I saw it for what it was, an olive branch, a genuine attempt to do better. "I'd be willing to try," I said. "One session, and we'll see." She smiled, relief washing over her face. "Thank you." As she was leaving, she paused at the door. "Tyler's been asking about you. He wants to come visit. See your new place." "He's always welcome," I said. "So are you, Aaron. Not to inspect or evaluate. Just to visit. Like family." She nodded, tears threatening again. "I'd like that." After she left, I sat on my balcony with a fresh cup of tea, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The conversation with Aaron had been a beginning, not an end. We had years of patterns to unlearn, boundaries to establish, trust to rebuild. But for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful that we could find our way back to each other, not as caretaker in charge, but as mother and daughter, two women with their own strengths and flaws, trying to love each other better. 1 month later, I hosted a small dinner in my apartment. Nothing fancy, just soup and bread and a simple salad, but the table was set with my blue flowered plates, the ones with the chipped edges that Aaron used to hate. Olivia arrived first, bringing a bottle of wine and fresh flowers. Tyler came next, awkward and gangly, ducking to avoid hitting his head on my low door frame. He presented me with a small pot of herbs he'd grown himself, basil and thyme, already fragrant. Aaron and Daniel came last. She looked nervous, clutching a bakery box too tightly. Daniel seemed more relaxed than I'd seen him in years, his arm easy around his wife's shoulders. "I brought dessert," Aaron said, holding out the box. "From that place near the bookstore. The one you always liked." I smiled. "I still do." The apartment was small for 5 people. We bumped elbows at the table, passed dishes hand to hand instead of across empty spaces. The conversation was tentative at first, everyone too aware of the broken places we were trying to mend. But then Tyler started telling a story about his history teacher's toupee flying off during a fire drill, and we were all laughing. Daniel shared news about a historic house he was listing, one with a ballroom, like the kind you used to dance in, Beverly. Olivia talked about her new position at the university library, and Aaron, surprisingly, said almost nothing, just watched, listened, smiled in a way that reached her eyes. After dinner, while Daniel helped me wash dishes, his idea, not Aaron's, I glanced into the living room where Aaron and Olivia sat together on the couch, heads bent over a photo album. Grace's album. I could hear their quiet laughter, see the familiar gesture of Aaron tucking hair behind her ear, just like Grace used to do. "She's trying," Daniel said, following my gaze. "Really trying. I know. It's been good for her. For us." He scrubbed a pot with more attention than it needed. We were in a bad place for a while. Financially, emotionally. She was carrying so much, trying to be perfect at work, at home, with you. It was crushing her. And now, he smiled. Now she's learning that the world doesn't end when things aren't perfect. That asking for help isn't failure. "That's a hard lesson," I said. "One I had to learn too." He raised an eyebrow. "You did? Why do you think I let Aaron take over for so long? It was easier than admitting I was struggling. Than asking for the help I actually needed, not the control she offered." Daniel considered this, then nodded. "We're quite a pair, aren't we? The controller and the controlled. Both too proud to just talk honestly." "Family's complicated," he said, "but worth the work." Later, as they were all preparing to leave, Aaron lingered behind. "This was nice," she said. "Really nice." "It was. Could we make it regular? Maybe once a month? I could host next time, if you prefer." I shook my head. "I like hosting, but I might need help with the shopping." She brightened. "I can do that. Just tell me what you need, and I'll—" She stopped herself, then tried again. "Would you like me to help with the shopping next time?" I smiled. "Yes, I would. Thank you." After everyone had gone, I sat in my quiet apartment, surrounded by the echoes of conversation, the lingering scent of soup and wine and family. My body ached from the standing, the cooking, the emotional energy of the evening. But it was a good ache, the kind that reminds you you're alive. I thought about the journey of the past few months, from that moment in Aaron's kitchen when something inside me finally broke, to this new beginning we were cautiously building. It hadn't been easy. It wouldn't always be smooth. But it was real, in a way our relationship hadn't been for years. The next morning, I woke early as usual. I made tea, ate a piece of the pastry Aaron had brought, and sat by the window watching the neighborhood come to life. A young mother pushed a stroller past the building. The mail carrier waved as he stuffed letters into boxes. Ruth knocked on my door, asking if I wanted to walk to the farmer's market with her. This was my life now. Small, contained, but mine. Full of choices I made, relationships I shaped, boundaries I defined. Later that day, Olivia called. "I'm making chicken soup from scratch," she said. "Grace's recipe. Want to come over and help? You always said I never get the seasonings right." I smiled. "I'd love to." As we worked in her tiny kitchen, chopping vegetables, simmering broth, I watched her hands so like Grace's, so like mine. 3 generations of women, connected by blood and bone and the simple act of feeding those we love. "You were right, you know," Olivia said suddenly. "About what? When you said I was always paying attention." She added a pinch of thyme to the pot. "I was to everything. How you stood up for yourself. How you remade your life when everyone said you couldn't. How you forgave Mom without letting her walk all over you again." I felt a surge of emotion so strong it nearly overwhelmed me. "I didn't know if I was doing the right thing," I admitted. "I just knew I couldn't keep doing the wrong one." She stirred the soup slowly. "That's the best kind of wisdom, isn't it? The kind that comes from living, not from books or lectures." "Yes," I said. "I suppose it is." We worked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Olivia asked, "Would you tell me more about when you used to dance before Grandpa, before Mom and Grace? When you were just Beverly?" I smiled, memories flooding back, the music, the movement, the freedom. "I'd love to," I said, "but it's a long story." She turned down the heat under the soup and pulled out 2 chairs. We've got time. And we did. All the time in the world. To remember, to share, to build something new from the broken pieces of what came before. Not perfect, not easy, but ours. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below.